Tensions are rising between the United States and Canada, threatening Alaska's only land connection to the rest of the country. British Columbia is proposing new tolls on the Alaska Highway, targeting American vehicles traveling to and from Alaska. This move is a direct response to recent U.S. trade actions and marks a dramatic shift in cross-border relations. Premier David Eby's government introduced the Economic Stabilization, Tariff Response Act, granting the province power to impose these tolls. The law specifically targets commercial traffic using BC as a land bridge, turning a once-routine journey into a flashpoint. For decades, free passage along this route was guaranteed by international agreement. Now, that's at risk. The highway is Alaska's lifeline, and new tolls could drive up costs for businesses and families. While the law is in place, the tolls aren't active yet, and questions remain about logistics and legality. Some argue that existing agreements might block the tolls, while others suggest weigh stations could be used for collection. The mere threat has already escalated tensions, leaving Alaskans caught in the middle of a high-stakes standoff. Leaders on both sides are now forced to consider their next moves as the situation grows more uncertain. This crisis began with aggressive U.S. trade policy. In early 2025, President Trump announced a 25% tariff on all Canadian and Mexican imports, threatening a major trade war. The move shocked Canada, its largest trading partner, and forced Canadian leaders to respond. The tariffs would devastate Canadian industries and disrupt the flow of goods across the border. President Trump's rhetoric escalated further, with talk of military action and even annexation, statements that alarmed Canadians and demanded a show of strength. Canada delayed the tariffs for a month, but the damage to trust was done. For decades, the U.S. and Canada worked to reduce trade barriers, not build new ones. The new tariffs marked a sharp break from the spirit of NAFTA and the USMCA. Canada's government felt compelled to defend its sovereignty and economy, setting the stage for retaliation. The era of open markets was suddenly replaced by threats and counter-threats. This shift in U.S. policy forced Canada's hand, leading directly to British Columbia's toll proposal and other retaliatory measures. The relationship between the two countries now faces its greatest test in generations. British Columbia's toll plan is just one piece of Canada's broader response. Prime Minister Trudeau's government quickly announced retaliatory tariffs on American goods, matching the U.S. move. Provinces joined in. Ontario imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S., targeting states that rely on Canadian power. Yukon's Premier Plea banned government liquor stores from buying American alcohol, and restricted U.S. companies from winning local contracts. These actions, though varied in scale, sent a unified message: Canada would not be bullied. Deputy Premier Nikki Sharma summed it up: "We did not ask for this trade war, but we will fight for BC's economy with every tool we have." The response was coordinated at every level, from Ottawa to the provinces and territories. Canada's strategy hit back where it hurts, from energy to consumer goods. The country's leaders made it clear they were prepared for a drawn-out economic battle. The trade dispute had become a national cause, with every region contributing to the defense. Canada's multi-layered pushback showed resolve and unity in the face of U.S. pressure. The message: Canada would not back down. At the heart of the dispute is the Shockwalk Corridor, the vital stretch of the Alaska Highway running through Canada. For years, the U.S. funded its maintenance, recognizing its importance for Alaskans. In 2024, Yukon secured $31 million from the U.S. for upkeep, but President Trump's 2025 executive order froze those funds. The funding halt left Yukon with the full burden of maintaining a highway used mostly by Americans. Canadian officials saw this as a direct punishment and a major escalation. The highway's remote, harsh conditions demand constant maintenance. Without U.S. support, safety and reliability are at risk. Yukon Premier Plea warned that the dispute threatened the long-standing friendship between Yukon and Alaska. The U.S. was now willing to jeopardize critical infrastructure for political leverage. The Shockwalk Corridor became a symbol of how far the trade conflict had gone. For Alaskans, this dispute is personal. While most cargo arrives by sea, the highway delivers the most time-sensitive goods: fresh food, medical supplies, and critical equipment. Tolls would raise costs for businesses and families, with higher prices at the grocery store and beyond. Alaska's oil and gas industry depends on the highway for urgent deliveries. Any disruption could have major economic consequences. The uncertainty is forcing businesses to rethink logistics and contingency plans. Governor Mike Dunleavy has called for a federal solution, knowing Alaska is caught in the crossfire. The dispute highlights Alaska's geographic isolation and dependence on Canadian cooperation. For most Americans, Canada is a distant neighbor. For Alaskans, it's the only land route home. The threat of tolls has made that reality painfully clear, creating anxiety across the state. The outcome of this trade war will shape daily life in Alaska for years to come. As British Columbia threatened Alaska's land access, U.S. politicians targeted BC's tourism industry. Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan proposed repealing the Passenger Vessel Services Act, allowing cruise ships to bypass Canadian ports. Nearly 2 million cruise passengers visit BC each summer, spending millions in local economies. If the law changes, ships could sail directly from Seattle to Alaska, cutting BC out entirely. Sullivan made it clear, this was economic retaliation for the toll threat. The move would devastate BC's tourism sector, putting thousands of jobs at risk. Cruise lines face uncertainty, torn between saving costs and maintaining relationships with Canadian ports. The dispute, which began with tariffs, now threatens major service industries. Both sides are targeting each other's economic weak spots, escalating the conflict. Political leaders on both sides have taken strong public stances. BC Premier David Eby framed the tolls as a necessary defense against U.S. pressure, insisting his province was not the aggressor. Yukon Premier Ranj Pillai expressed regret but stood firm, declaring, "Canada will never be the 51st American state." On the U.S. side, Senator Sullivan's cruise ship threat signaled a willingness to inflict economic pain in return. The rhetoric has grown heated, with words like fight and sovereignty replacing the usual language of partnership. Each side sees itself as the victim, committed to a strong response. The war of words has made quiet diplomacy nearly impossible. Leaders' statements are fueling a narrative of conflict, not cooperation. The divide is now deeper than ever. Amid the escalating conflict, Alaska's state legislature offered a rare note of hope. In a bipartisan move, lawmakers passed a resolution affirming Canada's sovereignty and celebrating the historic friendship between Alaska, Yukon, and BC. The resolution opposed both Canadian tolls and U.S. trade restrictions, calling for calm and reason on both sides. Though symbolic, the gesture was a powerful message of goodwill from those most affected by the dispute. It showed that, despite political fighting, regional relationships remain strong. The resolution is now before the Alaska Senate, aiming to build a bridge of friendship over troubled political waters. Alaskans and their Canadian neighbors share deep cultural and economic ties. The plea is a reminder of their shared destiny and the need to return to cooperation. The Alaska legislature's action stands as a call to remember the long history of partnership. It urges leaders to find a path back to friendship, away from damaging conflict. Despite the headlines, U.S. Canada cooperation hasn't vanished. Everyday connections, trade, family, and culture still bind the two countries. The Arctic Winter Games, set for 2026 in Yukon, will see Alaska sending a full team, showing commitment to cross-border ties. Scientists, law enforcement, and families continue to collaborate and visit, maintaining the real foundation of the relationship. These quiet connections don't make the news, but they're vital for goodwill and normalcy. The Alaska legislature's resolution and ongoing events like the Arctic Winter Games are reminders that the relationship is bigger than any single dispute. The challenge for leaders is to resolve political conflict without damaging the partnership that has defined North America for generations. The hope is that friendship and cooperation will ultimately prevail,